Hello once again, and welcome to another episode of Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal. With the eastern path out of Vermilion City blocked and apparently no ability to just walk around a sleeping Pokemon, we'll have to head north into Saffron City to continue the journey. And the interesting thing is, once you get to Saffron City, you can basically go in any direction that you'd like. I mean, there's still certain tasks you have to do in a certain order, but you can actually fight the gym leaders in any order you please. You could fight the one in Viridian City first if you wanted to. You would just have to wait until you actually get to Viridian City. I'll be taking them on in what I believe to be the intended order, but for now we have some items to gather in Saffron City before tackling the gym. First up is TM29, which contains Psychic. You get it in the same location you got it in Gen 1, and you should be more than familiar with the Psychic move at this point. And if you aren't, well, we have a Psychic-type gym coming up, so that should fix itself soon enough. Next up we have the Silphco building, which is still around but is unfortunately not a dungeon in Generation 2. In fact, you can't advance beyond the first floor. However, by talking to the guard on the first floor, you can get a special item that Silphco has just started producing. It is the Upgrade, a very generically named item that actually serves as the final trade evolution item, and you'll never guess which Pokemon it's for. It turns out that the item is for Porygon. Porygon, of all Pokemon, got an evolution in Gen 2, which I guess it needed one. It wasn't that useful in Generation 1, but that still feels kinda random. There's another location from Generation 1 that you can revisit. It is the Fighting Dojo, which is not open to challengers at the moment because their leader happens to be training at Mount Mortar in the Johto region. We met him a couple of episodes ago, as a matter of fact. However, you can find something here. It is the Focus Band, an item that, when held by a Pokemon, has about a 12% chance of saving them from a lethal hit, and it can activate multiple times in a row, so if you are very lucky, then it's actually a really good item to have. By the way, I say that the chance of it activating is 12%. That's because of some kind of math shenanigans, and later games in the series make it 10%. Much easier to understand. Well, with nothing better to do, it looks like it's gym battle time already, 2 minutes into the episode. The Saffron City gym has not changed all that much from Generation 1. It's still got that teleport puzzle. I think it's changed from Gen 1, but I've just spoiled the solution for Gen 2, so if you play this in the future, you're good to go. Now, in the previous video, I stated that the threat level of the Kanto gym leaders is not as high as the Johto gym leaders were, now that you're leveled up and have a more diverse array of Pokemon to choose from. Well, to be honest, I actually think the Sabrina fight is rather well designed, even though she only has 3 Pokemon. Remember, the Psychic type in Generation 1 was so powerful that they had to create 2 entirely different types just to counterbalance it, and they had to rework the special stat by splitting it into 2 separate stats. And Psychic is still a powerful type in this generation, don't get me wrong. If you're not using some kind of special defense wall, then you're going to be taking a lot of damage from the Psychic attacks that these guys have, and this Espeon at the start, it knows Sand attacks, so that's even worse. If you were thinking of powering through these guys with physical attacks and calling it a day, well, that's not going to be the best strategy anymore because Mr. Mime, or rather Mrs. Mime, it's a female Mr. Mime, she has Barrier and Reflect, which will drastically increase her physical defense, and Alakazam at the end also has Reflect. So I think special attacks are going to be the way to go, even though these guys do have some decent special defense on them. There's actually a great number of possible strategies you could use here. My Quagsire knows Amnesia, which greatly boosts special defense, so that's one way you could wall off these guys' attacks. In my case though, I just use my own Alakazam because those elemental punches are still really good. In Silver version, I just powered through it with whatever dark moves I could get my hands on. It wasn't really that efficient, but I did manage to pull through. Meanwhile, in Crystal version, Meganium has actually become a very useful party member thanks to Light Screen, which will have all the damage from the enemy Psychic attacks, which is really helpful. Meganium has become a really great party member at this point. It took a while for that to happen, but it finally did, and that makes me kinda happy. However, the most obvious strategy is probably to just use a dark type of your own. You'd be immune to the Psychic attacks, which means Mr. Mime and Alakazam become completely useless because the only damaging moves they have are Psychic moves. Also, a very common dark type move is Feint Attack, which never misses. The perfect counter to Espeon using Sand Attack. You just have to watch out because Espeon has Quick Attack and Swift. Thing is though, dark type availability is actually very poor up until this point. There's only 2 dark types you can get in the Johto region if I remember correctly, and one of them is found in Johto in Crystal version only. I mean, I'm actually going to be finding 2 more dark types in this very video, but Pokemon in Kanto tend to appear in the wild at like level 15 or so it might be a bit of a grind before your newly caught dark-type Pokemon is able to get past Espeon. This is a commonly brought up issue when talking about Generation 2, and I totally agree that it is an issue. I really think the wild Pokemon could have been bumped up to like level 25 or even 30. Trainers tend to be at level 30, and the gym leaders are well over level 40. You don't need to make the wild Pokemon start at level 15. At any rate, that still wasn't the hardest gym leader battle in the world, but it was one that had a lot of things to talk about, so I guess that's a win for the Kanto region in this case. What's definitely not a win, though, is the fact that some Pokemon in Generation 2 are exclusive to the postgame, as I'm sure I've mentioned already, but I'm gonna explain more about that here. So, on this random route, just to the west of Saffron City, is where we're gonna find not 1, but 2 new Pokemon that we have seen from trainers before, but we haven't been able to catch yet. They are Houndour and Murkrow, which are 2 dark types that have been used by Team Rocket in the past. And believe me, it doesn't stop with these guys either. Sneasel, exclusive to the postgame until Crystal version made it available in the Ice Path. Porygon's evolution, exclusive to the postgame. Metal Coats, exclusive to the postgame. You see where this is going? And it doesn't even stop there because there are several Pokemon that you have to wait until the postgame to be able to capture. They aren't necessarily caught in the Kanto region, there are some that can be found in the Johto region, you just have to find the correct fishing rod, which is located in the Kanto region. I'll spoil that right now. The only real explanation I have for why they did it this way is because they wanted to make it so that the Kanto region could still offer new Pokemon that the player had never seen before. I mean, it'd be boring if returning players explored the Kanto region again but had nothing new to find. At least that's what I think the logic was. Whether you agree with that logic or not, I really don't think the dark types should have been exclusive to the postgame because they are the brand new type. You've got to put those in front of the player so that they can get them and use them and see what's so cool about the new type. At any rate, next up, I'm headed north of Saffron City. I guess I could have headed a little bit more west, but I wanted to get this part of the game out of the way early. But before that, there's an item that can be picked up in the building that used to be the daycare in Generation 1. There's no need for a second daycare, of course, so instead this building houses the Cleanse Tag, which is an item that, when held by the lead Pokemon in your party, will cause repellents to repel all Pokemon instead of just the Pokemon that were below the level of your first Pokemon in the party. That's nice, I guess. But then again, with a wild Pokemon level so low in the Kanto region anyways, it seems kinda redundant. On that note, we head north into Cerulean City, which unfortunately has lost its unique music track. I really don't know why they didn't include it. I mean, it's 1 extra music track, they couldn't have been that strapped for space on the cartridge, could they? Regardless, there's not that much to talk about in Cerulean City because the gym is closed for the time being, so let's head east towards the Rock Tunnel instead. We have heard that something has gone down at the power plant, and something that's interesting about the Kanto region in Gen 2 is that you can really see that the region has changed somewhat in the 3-year gap between the 2 generations. Relevant to this part of the game is the fact that they have actually activated the abandoned power plant and are using it to power a literal bullet train, but something has happened and the train is no longer operable as a result. Once the train becomes operable again, it will become a very useful travel point between Goldenrod City and Saffron City. Until that point, traveling back to Johto if you need to is actually really annoying. You have to fly to the Pokemon League and then surf down all the way into New Bark Town, and then if you want to get back to Kanto, you can fortunately just fly to any city you want, but you have to go back to New Bark Town, and it's annoying. For some reason, they just decided to get rid of the guy who teleports you from the Pokemon League to New Bark Town. I guess they figured you wouldn't need him anymore after becoming champion. Rock Tunnel doesn't have anything essential, but it is where you can encounter Cubone in the wild, and that's important because I have taught Golbat the Thief move. This move lets you steal the hold item your opponent is holding, and that's important because wild Pokemon can sometimes be holding items, and in Cubone's case, it has a 2% chance to be holding a Thick Club, and also Marowak can be holding this item as well. The Thick Club is an item that will double the attack power of Cubone or Marowak. I am using a Marowak, so I wanted to get this item, and I was very fortunate to find the Thick Club within like 10 minutes of starting my search. Also, the item's description implies that it's good for nothing other than being sold for cash, which is actually kind of mean. The Thick Club actually turns Marowak into a real monster in battle, so it's really great to have it. Marowak just becomes so powerful with this item that it can actually break the damage calculation in Gold and Silver. It's really funny. Some bugs such as this are actually fixed in Crystal version. However, if Crystal ever gets into a Link battle with Gold and Silver version, then it actually reverts to the unfixed programming, because otherwise it would cause desync in the Link battle if that situation ever arose, which is also kind of funny. So then, the next step of this part of the game is to actually visit the power plant, which can be a bit annoying because you actually can't fly to the Pokemon Center that's sitting right in front of Rock Tunnel. It's really weird. They let you fly to Lake of Rage, but not the Pokemon Centers in front of Union Cave or in front of Rock Tunnel. And come to think of it, I'm not exactly 100% certain that you actually have to fix the power plant, but it's really convenient for me if I do anyways, so I'm gonna do it. And so here we are. All you really need to do is talk to the guy managing the power plant and then exit the building. You will then be informed that something suspicious is going on in Cerulean City, so let's fly back there as quick as we can. And you know, they don't really say where in Cerulean City you're supposed to look, but if you go into the now empty gym, you will encounter a suspicious looking fellow leaving. His outfit looks really familiar, doesn't it? Yep, they're back once again, or at least this one guy is. This is really the only quote-unquote plot event in the Kanto region, and it can come off as kind of fillery because, you know, throughout the Kanto region, you're encouraged to explore at your own pace, go wherever you want. The region is actually very open, so to have something like this, for some it could be an event that kind of slows the game down just a little bit. Luckily, you don't have to search very far to find him again. He's headed north, so that's where we'll be going. But first, we should talk to this guy. See, he's standing near where there used to be a cave that housed some very powerful Pokemon, including the most powerful Pokemon of all time, but I guess it caved in or something. When you talk to this guy, however, suddenly his item finder starts going off, which is interesting because it's the first time we've ever seen an NPC with an item finder, so that's neat. But it also means there's a hidden item there, and that's the first time the game has ever indicated that there's a hidden item outside of just using the item finder itself. Really strange. At any rate, it turns out that the last remaining member of Team Rocket, who has really bad English for no reason, stole a part from the generator, which is what caused the power plant to go down. What exactly was he planning to do with the generator part? Was he just going to, like, sell it off for cash or something? I mean, at this point, Team Rocket probably doesn't have very much capacity for forward thinking, but you know. Naturally, we must battle the guy to get the location of the generator part, and it turns out that he has a single level 30 Golbat. Really? Team Rocket, you can do so much better than this. Why don't you steal some actually good Pokemon for a change? And isn't this like a complete waste of time, making me fight a single Golbat just to advance the plot? Alright, fine, whatever. A single Ice Punch and we're done. And then he spills the beans that the generator part is inside the Cerulean City gym. In fact, he chucked it into the water, which would probably short-circuit it and destroy it completely, but never expect a rocket grunt to do anything intelligent. So I bet you're wondering about that hidden item where Cerulean Cave used to be. Well, it's actually really strange. The item is a Berserk Gene, an item that is exclusive to Generation 2. The remakes don't have it, no other Pokemon game has this. The Berserk Gene, when held by a Pokemon, inflicts them with confusion but raises their attack power by 2 stages. Very much a risk-reward item, but the weird thing about it is it's consumable, so as soon as you use it once, it's never able to be used again. And it's a unique, one-of-a-kind item too, so this is a really weird decision to make it consumable. It's actually meant to be found on Wild Mewtwo, but there are no Wild Mewtwo in Generation 2. Obviously, right? So what gives? This is a really weird item. Also very strange is that this tree has a hidden potion in it. A regular potion, not a hyper potion, not a max potion, just a regular potion. I do not understand it one tiny little bit. But never mind that for now, let's just try to find the stupid generator part before my head explodes. It's invisible, so you have to either use the item finder to find it, or just look up where it is. I happen to know where it is, because I have to play through this game 3 times anyways. So there's the generator part, let's take it back to the power plant. Once you return the generator part, not only will the train be able to start back up again, thus enabling quick travel back to the Johto region, you will also receive the TM for Zap Cannon, which is a really strong electric type attack with horrible accuracy, so I never use it. I don't know why you would want to use it. It's not like using Rain Dance will actually make this thing's accuracy 100% like it does for Thunder. So, I don't know what the point of this move is. Actually, forget what I said previously, you actually have to do the power plant quest because after that quest is done, you need to find the Cerulean City gym leader in order to be able to challenge her, and she's located shortly after a long string of 7 really boring trainer battles that I have to go through 3 times in all 3 of my playthroughs, and oh my goodness, this is getting boring. There's nothing special about these guys. They're an allusion to the Nugget Bridge from the previous generation, where you would fight 6 trainers and get a nugget, and you get one here too, but come on. I mean, I guess one thing that's amusing about it is that the 6th trainer actually isn't part of the gauntlet. He was just waiting there so that when somebody came by all exhausted after 5 battles, he could swoop in and win instantly, which is kinda nasty of him to do, but no matter. It was actually after wrapping up the 7th battle and getting the nugget that Flaffy finally evolved into Ampharos. I was waiting for that to happen so I could take the EXP share off of Flaffy and then start leveling up something else. But hey, another Dex entry checked off. Ampharos is known for being a pretty good electric type, but I didn't need an electric type myself. I had Alakazam with Thunder Punch. That's all the electricity I need. Especially considering that we have a water gym coming up. Anyone up for some fried fish? Speaking of fish, we run into Misty, who is apparently dating, I guess? And for some reason her date is scared off by our presence. What kind of man would be scared off by another trainer showing up? What a wuss. Oh, and you can also cut through this bush for another item, a protein, I think. And as we continue with totally crashing Misty's date, I'd like to talk about what's in that building there. That building, as you know, was previously Bill's house, however his grandfather is now watching over it. If we enter and show Bill's grandfather a specific Pokemon, we can receive an item including an Everstone. I have no idea why they're still giving out Everstones, they're completely useless at this point, but you can also get the 4 Evolution Stones from Bill's grandfather. 1 per save file, unfortunately, and the Pokemon you need to show him changes depending on the version. I've already gone over what I think of this whole thing. The only way to get Evolution Stones in Gen 2 is either here or through Mystery Gift. It's really awful. Again, it probably works better to just send the Pokemon to Generation 1 and use the Evolution Stones bought from the store there. As for the gym, normally you would need to fight through a gauntlet of trainers in order to get to Misty, but hilariously you can actually just surf up behind her and talk to her there. No need to battle anybody else. This has gotta be awkward. She's talking to me and the gym music isn't playing, the surf music is playing, and it's completely inappropriate. After taking note that Misty has actually aged and is no longer wearing just a bikini in battle, I should say that water is not the best type in the world for a monotype team, so this battle is going to be less about the tactics and more about the AI, because this is a battle where I actually decided to point out the intricate changes to the AI in Generation 2. Misty leads off with a Golduck as a nod to her anime counterpart who had a Psyduck in the show. Golduck has a number of psychic attacks, so I can use Light Screen again here. What's noteworthy, however, is what happens when Golduck gets knocked out, because you'll see that in 3 separate fights, she decided to send out a different Pokemon in each one of them based on the type of Pokemon that I was using. When I was using Meganium against Golduck, she decided to send in Lapras, an Ice-type, next. And in another version of the fight, when I was using Gengar against Golduck, she decided to send in Quagsire, a Ground-type, instead. You see what's going on here? When the computer is choosing its next Pokemon, it actually makes a strategic decision about which one to send in. Granted, this hardly matters because the AI still never switches off their current Pokemon unless they've been knocked out. At least that's what I thought. There are a few rare cases where the computer will switch off their current Pokemon. I believe it's possible for them to switch off their current Pokemon if they have absolutely no moves capable of doing anything. Like if you only had normal moves against a Ghost type, I think they would switch off in that situation. And of course, if your opponent is using something that induces a switch out, like Baton Pass or U-Turn later on in the series, I think that does count as a switch, but it's them choosing a move instead of actively choosing to switch off their current Pokemon. No, what I'm talking about here is that when Misty sent in Lapras, she decided to use a new move called Perish Song. This is honestly a very creepy move that causes both sides to automatically faint in 3 turns. Now, switching off of your current Pokemon will negate this effect completely. So I was thinking that the opponent was just going to let their own Pokemon faint due to Perish Song, but no. If they're down to 1 turn with Perish Song, they will actually switch off, and that was very pleasant to see. Of course, that means if I had not overwritten Mean Look on Gengar, I could have trapped the opponent. The so-called Perish Trap strategy with something like Mean Look is actually a very controversial strategy in competitive play because of how little effort it takes. You just switch off on the last turn of Perish Song and watch as your opponent faints. I mean, I can think of worse strategies than this, but still. I'm actually interested if Misty would ever use Perish Song while she's down to her last Pokemon. That would be really dumb because you're basically guaranteeing your defeat in 3 turns, but you never know, the AI might be that dumb. I mean, this is still not the smartest AI in the Pokemon series. You want a semi-decent AI with at least decent team building, then you go to the stadium games and play those. They're not gonna outsmart you by any means, but they should still provide a decent challenge. All I can really say about the remainder of the fight is that Starmie got some hilariously good luck against me, so I had Meganium use Light Screen to reduce the power of Ice Beam. Even though it's super effective, when Light Screen is up, it doesn't do that much damage. Or so I thought, because Starmie got 1-2 critical hits and I had to heal up with Hyper Potions, and then it got a freeze on me. Of course, by using all of my consumable items, I was still able to win this battle of attrition, but that was still some really hilarious luck on Misty's part. I actually think this fight does a lot to show why Starmie is a good Pokemon, by the way. Variety of moves available, high speed, high special attack, pretty good Pokemon overall. You know, I kinda wish I had brought the move Thunder into this battle because Lapras knows Rain Dance, and Rain Dance makes Thunder have 100% accuracy. So by using Rain Dance, even though she's powering up her own water attacks, she's also making her weakness able to hit her with perfect accuracy. Kind of a dumb play. Ironically, I think Sunny Day would actually be better for her as that further reduces the accuracy of Thunder. Even though it weakens water moves, she can always use her non-water moves because she's got plenty of those. Now then, with another badge under our belts, or wherever the badges are stored, we head back to Saffron City because now it's time to get an optional item. I know for certain this item is optional. I wasn't sure about the power plant at first, but it turns out that the power plant is mandatory. This item is not. So even though we fixed the power plant and therefore allowed the train to run again, we're not exactly allowed to ride free. We need a pass first. Go figure. So where do you find a pass? Well, the game doesn't really tell you this, but you have to find Copycat, an NPC from the first game who would give the TM for Mimic in exchange for a Pokédoll. However, it seems that she has lost that Pokédoll, and if we can find it, she'll give us her Rail Pass. Yeah, it seems that they tore down Copycat's old house in order to make room for the train station and moved her in someplace else. Probably gave her the pass as compensation. Also, I did a double take at first because I was fairly certain that Copycat's palette changes depending on the player's palette. If you pick the female character, then you have a blue palette, whereas the male character has a red palette, and it turns out I was right. Luckily, the Pokédoll is very easy to find. It is at the Pokemon Fan Club in Vermilion City. It seems someone found the doll and started carrying it around. So I returned the doll, got the pass, and then headed into Celadon City. I technically could have come here before Cerulean City, and it probably would have made more sense for continuity's sake. Whatever that is supposed to mean. But I'm here now, so let's get started with some item collection. First, if you head to the top of the Game Freak building, you will find a man who will tell you a spooky story at night. And only at night, by the way, you can't do this in the daylight. He will then give you the TM for Curse, which is a move that you're probably familiar with at this point. You can teach it to a ghost to get its ghost effect, or a non-ghost to get its non-ghost effect. This guy isn't exactly going to win Creepypasta Award of the Month, but what can you do? I think for some, ghost stories will just stop being scary at some point, and it becomes more about lore and analysis, and jump scare let's plays on YouTube. And now I'm seriously starting to consider a video about Pokemon creepypastas, because there are a couple of interesting ones. They tend to get drowned out by all the crappy stuff, though. Celadon City's Game Corner is still around despite no longer being operated by Team Rocket, so let's head there next. It has unique prizes to the Game Corner in Goldenrod City, and in Crystal version in particular, they added a special Pokemon here. Exclusively in Crystal version, for the price of 8,888 coins, you can find a Pokemon that is normally only found in the final dungeon of the game. It is Larvitar, a rock and ground type, and since it comes in at level 40, it's not far off from reaching its final evolution stage at level 55. Yeah, Larvitar is basically Gen 2's equivalent to Dratini. Next up, you can head over to the restaurant and search the trash can to find leftovers. This would normally be very gross to me, but apparently your Pokemon don't mind eating food out of the garbage because holding it causes your Pokemon to recover a little bit of health every turn, and it does not get consumed. Well, I guess if it doesn't get consumed, then they're not eating it, but then how are they recovering the health? This item makes no sense. And as you just saw, there is a hidden PP up in the same location that had a hidden PP up in Generation 1. I guess the protagonist never canonically picks up that PP up, which is a really weird thing to establish in canon. And our final order of business for the day is Celadon City's Pokemon Gym. As you all know, this gym houses a bunch of grass-type trainers, and yeah, the grass type, I really don't know how to make this gym interesting. You just set them all on fire and you're basically done. I guess it's worth noting that there are at least a couple of grass types in Generation 2 that aren't part poison. Like in Generation 1, it was literally just Tangela that was pure grass and didn't carry the poison type along with it. Now you've got a couple of Pokemon that are pure grass, you've got some grass flying, and that's basically it, I think. Grass just was not good in the first 2 generations. Though something weird did happen with that last trainer before Erica, in Gold version she did not challenge me at all, which is really weird. There's no reason she wouldn't challenge me, but in Gold version she didn't, which means I might have done something wrong or maybe made a mistake with one of the patches that I put in. Oh well, time for the Erica battle. And yeah, I really just don't know what to say here. Gold has Typhlosion with Flame Wheel, Silver has Feraligatr with Ice Punch, and in an homage to the strategy I used back in Green version, Chris is going to use Golbat with Wing Attack because, of course, as I mentioned back then, Poison Flying type, that means grass attacks are double resisted by Golbats, and it's really funny to actually fight a gym leader with a Golbat. It's especially hilarious because Erica actually tries to go for the Sunny Day Solar Beam combo. I haven't mentioned this yet, but Sunny Day will make it so that the move Solar Beam no longer requires a turn to charge up. However, that's useless against a Pokemon that double resists the move. Also, by using Sunny Day, she's making herself even more vulnerable to one of her weaknesses, namely the Fire type. Good going, Erica. Again, I think most players would agree that Weather just did not do enough in Gen 2, but in the later generations they definitely do more things to make Weather more valuable. So if I ever get to Gen 3, that's going to be worth a look, especially considering Gen 3 is all about Weather to begin with. Doing this whole deep dive into Generations 1 and 2 has definitely made me appreciate them a lot more, but I don't think I'm alone in saying that Generation 3 is definitely a huge step up for Pokemon. Even after Generation 2 has done so much for the series, Gen 3 is going to do just as much and even more, so I would love to do a playthrough like this of Gen 3, but there are a couple of things that I would have to figure out before I get to that. Am I finished with this fight yet? She only has 4 Pokemon, this shouldn't be taking so long. Wing Attack's probably not strong enough even though it is super effective here. I'm actually thinking that this Golbat might evolve into Crobat if I keep raising its Friendship, but Friendship does take quite a while to go up. So even then that might take a while. So finally Erica is defeated, and interestingly, Erica is one of the only Kanto gym leaders to actually hand out a TM after defeating her. Like, all of the Johto leaders handed out TMs as you'd expect, but the Kanto gym leaders did not, except for Erica so far, and she hands us Giga Drain, which is a stronger version of Mega Drain and is probably not that useful. Its power points is actually very low, so I can't really imagine actually using a move slot to teach Giga Drain. Maybe Meganium will like it, I'm not sure. But hey, I've covered 3 gyms in a single video and it's still under 30 minutes long. How interesting. I guess that speaks to the pace of the Kanto region. It's going by very quickly. So that just leaves 4 more gyms. I'm going to cover maybe 3 gyms in the next video if I can afford to. And before I close out this video, I'm going to show you the evolution that Porygon gets when it's traded while holding an upgrade. It evolves into Porygon 2. I'm not really sure what the difference is. I'm sure there's a stat boost and maybe it gets some more moves. But I've really never heard of Porygon 2 being useful competitively, so it's probably nothing special. Well, that's the final trade evolution with a held item, and the final trade evolution in general, as a matter of fact. So with that, I will close down this video. Next time we take on more gym leaders and see what the rest of the region has for us. I'm Ephraim225, and I'll see you next time.